Well, does it count towards something required?
I don't think we need a quorum tonight because we're only setting a date for the only formal action we're taking is setting a date for next meeting and possible hearing, right? This is a workshop without any definite.
Does it count towards something required?
I don't think we need. Shanley's getting some feedback from YouTube, I think.
All right, is everyone there?
Shanley's muted. I think she's getting some feedback.
Yeah, you have to have a quorum for tonight, and that's 3.
John is supposed to be.
John's here.
Oh, okay.
John's here. I just
We've
thought
got
I
a
didn't know.
quorum.
What about Lucia?
And Lucia's coming. She
Lucia
said she
will
might
a
be
little
late.
That's, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I got booted again.
Okay.
All right.
Are we good?
Jeannie's coming back. She got booted again, so
Oh.
There's Mark too.
That troublemaker.
yeah, Jeannie.
I know.
Mark's here.
Oh, there's Mark. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, okay.
Okay, Mark's here.
Oh, he is.
Yep.
All right. So we know that Lucia may be a little late. So we'll go ahead if we're good with YouTube. This is the Camden Planning Board meeting, July 6th, a workshop to discuss proposed ordinance related to state mandated housing rules. The brief overview is this is the stuff that we have to do to be in compliance with state law. So Shanley's going to run us through it, but there's not really a lot that we can kind of tweak or change on this because this is what the state, this is us state stuff into alignment, and we are in a little bit of a timeline because we need to set a hearing before end of July so that we can get it on the ballot for November. That's the goal. But there's not really a lot that we can kind of dicker about unless it's just something that we see conflicts. So Shanley already has done a ton of work to get through all of the minutia and the numbers and all that. So I will hand it over to you.
Right, like as we talked about before earlier, there's 3 components for this affordable housing requirement from the state, and tonight in front of you will just be 2. The one left out that we're not discussing tonight will be the accessory dwelling units, which is going to come along later. Actually, because we're working with the short-term rental, so that'll probably be delayed. So we were trying to see if we could go forward with the 2 in front of you, and we can start with whichever one you want to start with first, Chris, or however you all wanted to do it. Or if you have any questions right up front, just feel free to ask me or anytime.
Yeah.
Can I lay out something really quick on just timing and the reason why we're doing it this way a little bit? So the legislature did have a July 1 of just a few days ago as a start date for this. The legislature did pass and the governor signed a law to extend it out for a year for municipalities that are under town meeting form of government, which is what we are. So by July 1, 2024, these amendments have to be in our zoning ordinance. So they would either need to get approved in November this year or June of next year, go to voters. And with the short-term rental piece moving forward, which I think is going to probably consume a lot of discussion over the next 6 months probably. Knowing that is there, and the accessory dwelling unit piece can be held off until June to make sure we're making sure the accessory dwelling unit mandate and our short-term rental where we're going with that is consistent, because I think that's critical so we don't have to change it. And I think peers might be on your agenda too for that time. So what we're really trying to do is get these 2 pieces to the select board so they can put it on the ballot in November, and we have to have it the hearing, I think, has to be no later than the 25th of this month. So we are kind of under the gun to do it. So,
Right.
John, go ahead.
Just before we go any further, I skipped myself on our agenda just to see if there is any public comment on non-agenda items from anyone.
Can I also say, Chriso, that and this will be my last piece, is they did set up a fund for municipalities to adopt these rules because it was a mandate.
Right.
So I will be submitting for reimbursement to the state for the time that Shenley's put in, I've put in, the town attorneys put in, as well as the planning board time and the hearings and all of that advertisement. So we'll be submitting probably within the next month for a one-time check from the state to cover the costs.
Right. The other just agenda item is that we are tabling until our next meeting the further discussions from the workshop with the select board until Ethan is with us. So that is still on the radar, but we are just going to wait till we're all present for that conversation. All right, if there's no comment on non-agenda items, we will dive into the workshop. Welcome, Lucia. You're muted. Are your guests all taken care of?
Thank you. Thanks for bearing with me.
Hey, Chriso, can I just ask a couple of questions first?
Yeah.
When you, Jeremy, when you said town meeting, I thought we voted not to have the town meeting last June. Is that?
We're still governed by the town meeting formula. It's how we vote, as opposed to a city council style agreement arrangement.
Right.
So even though we don't have an official town meeting, we're still governed by it?
Yeah.
That's the name for an election, a ballot election is
Yeah.
town meeting.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to a city council style government where, if this was Rockland, the city council would vote on the zoning or amendments rather than the public.
Right, okay.
So City of Rockland, for instance, has to comply by December of this coming December. They got extended from July to December for city council form of governments.
But they don't have to deal with all the same level of public notice and hearings and announcements because it doesn't go to a public vote.
Right. John, did you have a question?
No, I was saying hello to Lucia.
Yeah. Mark?
A question, since we mentioned this going to a town vote, but it's a mandate. So what is the mechanism here? We're going to be restructuring our ordinance to be compliant with the mandate and presenting it to the voters. What is the plan B if the voters say no?
Well, plan B is, and it's written, and I read it in the law. If your municipality doesn't apply it and doesn't put it in your ordinance, then it actually it applies no matter what. And the developer can move forward with a project in town. We could try to stop it and say it doesn't meet our ordinance requirements, but they would win in court. We have no choice. Similar to shoreland zoning, that's a little different, but that is state mandated.
Yeah.
In every municipality in the state. And there are some communities like locally, like Knox, the town of Knox in Waldo County, and I think Troy even, they have never adopted shoreland zoning locally because it's one of those things that's hard to approve at town vote. So what the state did is they came in and said, okay, well, you don't adopt your own, you're going to adopt the minimum standards that we have. And
Right.
those are enforced in the town. And it would be similar. That's
This gives us the option to actually intentionally work it into our existing zoning and meet their standards the way we would like to, rather than. But like plenty of like Cushing, like Jerry says, Cushing has virtually no zoning, so these minimums will get put in place.
Okay.
But they don't have as complicated overlays and
right.
interactions and previous. It's making it line up, and that's the work that Shenley's been doing, of making it line up with our existing ordinances and zones.
Because we don't have to change things like minimum lot size. And we're not doing that. So you're not going to see a wholesale change of the
Right.
character of neighborhoods. You will see more, or you have the potential to see more dwelling units on a lot. But the lot itself is not going to, be cut in half or a third or 2/3. The lot is still the minimum lot size requirement, and the lot coverage requirements are still apply, and setbacks all still apply. So that help?
We also brought in a certain amount of this last June, was it? As far as some of the reduction of lot size requirements.
Oh, we did? Yes, we did. They didn't go far enough.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, they didn't go far enough.
I think
This requirement, but it was a
Um,
different thing.
I think some of our questions will probably be answered as Shenley takes us through this.
Sure.
So I know we're all getting, there's a lot to get our heads wrapped around, but I think there's a little bit of a pro forma nature to this, and I think we'll get through it quicker if we
Go through.
listen and.
Okay. Do you all have your coffee? Okay, well, I can start with, I'll just give you a quick overview. We looked at everything and we went through each section of the zoning ordinance, trying to figure out how we would make the changes, and just making sure we understand the law and exactly what I just stuck with the statute instead of the rule, because the actual law is easier for me to read and understand than their interpretation of what it is. So we just stuck with the actual law that was written. And so like Jeremy said, we're not reducing lot sizes. The main changes we're going to be doing is we're changing the minimum lot area per dwelling unit. So in essence, we're putting more dwelling units on an existing lot. And so if we come back to you guys for a public hearing, everything we talk about tonight will come to you and strike through, underline text that they're amending the actual zoning ordinance. So you'll see everything in there. And if I could show you, I guess I'll show you in my screen, if that's okay. Let's see if this is the right one. I'll show you. So this is just like a sample. Can you guys see my screen? It says sample.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we would go through every single district, like zoning district that we have already in our zoning ordinance, 8.1 through 8.16. And we would go through there. And of course, you see at the top minimum lot area, and that's to maintain the character of each zoning district. So we have, this is as small as you can have, 30,000 square feet. But then when you get down to the minimum lot area per dwelling unit, that's when we made the change. And so this new square feet per dwelling unit, that implements the new requirements, the state requirements. And of course, we're always going to be ruled by the septic system. So if it's on a septic system, 20,000 is the minimum lot area per dwelling unit. You can't get any more dense than that, according to state law. But all these other frontage, setbacks, lot coverage, structure height, everything's going to still apply just like it did before. We're just allowing more dwelling units per lot. And so we'll make those changes. And like I said, strike through, underline. Same thing for like in your traditional village district. The new minimum lot per dwelling unit is going to be 3,333 square feet per dwelling unit. We would propose eliminating two-family dwelling because they're going to be allowed. There's no sense in putting that in there. And when it comes to multifamily dwellings, this gets covered in the other section, which is affordable housing overlay. When somebody comes before you and wants to put a multifamily affordable housing development, those are only allowed a multifamily dwelling in areas that allow multifamily dwelling. So we would have to put a reference, either a link or somehow link to the new overlay zone. So we've got two things going on here. We've got the first section 2, which allows up to 4 dwelling units per lot if it's a vacant lot in a growth area, which is our VE district, Village Extension District. That's the only growth area district we have. So if it's vacant, we can allow up to 4 dwelling units per lot. So we have that for affordable housing development. And they also have to allow multifamily development. So we are only, if you have multifamily development and you're in a primary growth area, you can do, well, you can do both. You can do affordable housing development and multifamily. So I don't want to get this too confused. I want to kind of keep it separate. So, but I'm just showing you, just so you know, when we come back to you with the changes, you'll see it just like it is in the code, the underlined strike through, but it'll be everything that we discussed today or any changes you want to make or that you all see that, that need addressing, you don't think is addressed. And feel free to anybody, if you have any questions, just to jump in. This will help me explain it better to you. Yeah.
I do have a quick question and it's really the only one I have for this evening's discussion. And when I was reading the state statute, it talked about a requirement to allow 2.5 times the density for a affordable housing project. And I'm just a little confused when I look at the sample district that you have up on the screen and removing the single family minimum lot size from 10 to 10,000 to
Right.
333. Are those unrelated, or I'm looking at that as 3 times?
They're unrelated. No, you're right. It's unrelated. What you're talking about, the 2.5 times the base density, that's going to be covered explicitly in just the housing, affordable housing overlay zone. So that's going to be in your packet.
Okay.
See if I can find it. So yeah, that's covered, that 2.5 times in that chart. That's covered for that. But there's going to be some crossover. So that I'm kind of showing you too much at once in the beginning. But yeah, we will have some things that are going to be covered in the zoning, just out and out in the zoning ordinance, and then in the overlay district as well. And we'll have to make reference to the overlay district, as you can see here, when it comes to multifamily, because that's what's going to cover your affordable housing overlay zone, because it's only going to be allowed where multifamily is allowed. So it's kind of weird, but it's going to overlap a little bit. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Got it. But as you discuss the 2.5 times, that'll be helpful for me if you
right. Okay.
Well, for somebody who's not good at math.
Let me find the, oops, I lost you. Okay, let me find this one and I'll show you. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the affordable housing overlay zone. So this is, well, can we just go ahead and jump into that too? Because that's going to be a whole separate thing. And so when you see this, it'll have a new section number and it'll all be underlined text because it's all going to be brand new. And then anything that needs to be changed in the code to correspond with this will be changed as well. So it's all cross-referenced and it all makes sense and flows. We just lifted the definitions that the state gave us for things such as what is an affordable housing development, what's base density, designated growth area. We already know that's our VE. One thing tonight, the state's definition of dwelling unit is really vague. Our definition is right here in the town, and it's more explicit. And I think the attorney even recommended that maybe we go with something more like this because it talks about living quarters, sleeping and cooking facilities and such as that. So maybe you would want to replace this with the town's existing definition. That's something for you to decide if you'd like.
Shirley, are you sharing that screen?
Yeah, can you see it?
No.
Nobody can see it. I'll talk to myself. Hold on one sec. I have sharing screen.
I'm seeing an old screen that's.
Do you see housing?
We're still seeing your first
sample.
Oh, okay. Okay, hang on one second. Let me stop sharing and then share it again. Hang on one second.
If it's easier for you too, Shenley, I can pull up the whole agenda and we can go down through that if you want to do it that way.
Okay, tell me if you can see this. Hang on.
Yeah.
See it? Okay. Okay, sorry, you guys. So this is, thanks for telling me. This is the overlay zone. This is the whole section will be underlined because it'll be new. And then here are the definitions. And like I said, when we get down to dwelling unit, like I said, I kind of went with marching orders and just put in what the state had, but the town's definition is a lot more explicit. And I think that's probably a better one, but that's up to you all to decide. So we go down and it defines long-term affordability, and it says, it has details of this is what you do. You're going to do a restrictive covenant, and it's going to be recorded with the Knox County deed registry of deeds when we get it approval. This defines multifamily dwelling, which I think in our regular code, we define it as one or more structures. And this just has a structure containing 3 or more dwelling units. And so we may want to use our own for this one. It just depends what you want to do, but that would need to be changed if you want to do that. Or Jeremy.
I would think we, just trying to keep this in a good path to get to a hearing. Do you want to touch on these right now? From my perspective, I think the dwelling unit definition should match up with
Okay.
ours. So we change theirs to ours.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think anytime that our language is more specific,
Okay.
because we've already established it, I
Okay.
think we should go
Good.
ahead and
Good.
Okay.
and that just because the whole point is to make it match our current,
Perfect.
Right.
And
That's-
same,
to
same
say
for
that.
multi-dwelling, I think multifamily dwelling, we should just use our definition.
Great. Got that. Okay. That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Thank you. And then, yeah, so then we move on down here and then increased, because this was kind of a chart. This is more, it could be in our ordinance, it could not be, but I think it helps make it more explicit how we plan on implementing the new law. But this gives you, the top of here is the requirements. And so for each zoning district, it tells you, do we require public? Luckily for all of our multifamily, we require it be on public sewer. So that takes care of that requirement. And then the 2.5 times the base density, and this is the new result, be 2 dwelling units per 5,000 square feet. Parking, we can't exceed. We have to be more relaxed in our parking requirements because it's affordable housing. You want that passed on to the consumer. So there we go. We have no more than 2 off-street parking spaces. So this means the parking standard would be modified as well. So when it comes to you next week or the week after, the parking standard is going to be modified. It'll reflect the new law changes. So I don't need to go over every single one of these. I don't think, unless anybody has any questions. I know, let's see if we go down here. So then we just make a little note that, of course, the subdivision, shoreline zoning, any existing state or federal requirements, there still have to be met. All of our bulk setbacks, all those density things have to be required, have to be met too. And here's like where I showed you in the beginning, where it says that a link in the existing bulk and space standards, that's where we'd say, click, see this in the AHA's overlay district. This is where you're, that would kick you in and throw you into this. If you want to get more densities, more bonus density in your affordable family development, you just see this link here and it'll link you to that and tell you. So anyways, the rest of this is pretty much just lifted from the state requirements. Let me see if I added in. I added in like a form. Where did I find it? Oh, and this is, I kind of just, we don't have a form yet, but Jeremy and I were talking about adding enforcement and monitoring of long-term affordability. Again, I know, John, you had brought this up in the very beginning about how is local government going to, implement this and how are they going to maintain this? So I would assume that some affordable housing developments would be recipients. They would get either some kind of state or maybe federal funding. And I'm pretty sure they're going to have to show long-term affordability to those agencies as well. And somehow we could be either copied on that or be included in that. But also I know there's forms around different places have like an annual compliance report, and it's a form, and they just send that in every year showing us how they meet the long-term affordability. So I put that in there just as an extra way to, have a way to enforce it and monitor it, because I know that's an issue. And 30 years, that's a long time, and it's a minimum of 30 years. So Anybody have anything, just pipe right in. And so, like I said, the rest of this is just definitions and not really definitions, but standards that were put in place by the state. And then these are this falls in line, just like with any of our other districts. So I just have all the sections: screening, shoreland, historic, application and implementation. So those are basically how it would look to you coming forward, unless you all see something you want to change other than like we talked about the definitions. We can make those changes easily, but the definitions really spell out everything in the requirements. So we know what we're dealing with. So if it comes to most cases, multifamily like this is going to be a subdivision also ordinance. So it's kind of clear when they go to approve a subdivision proposal, that this will be clear what the plan board is actually going to approve, what they need for criteria to approve it. So you got to think about that too. So, and there'll also be some changes to the open space zoning. So you'll see that as well, because open space zoning touches on density and how to calculate that. So we'll have all that in there for you guys to.
Here's a question, Shenley. Open space, and since these affordable housing is only in the village extension, right?
Right. Well, no, open space, it has to be multifamily. So you're right. RU1, RU2, and CR, which is mandatory for open space.
Right.
They don't have multifamily. So you won't see affordable housing for those.
Right. You'll just see them in the village extension in essence.
Exactly. Right.
So the village, I would say that, and the village extension, as I recall, the open space subdivision is not mandatory in the village extension.
Right.
So I'm just pointing that out so that
it's voluntary.
When you go look at the tweaking the open space piece, Shenley, or when we do that, just make, I think it's important to keep in mind that it's not mandatory.
Right. It's voluntary. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's.
If I may, do you have a map handy, or could you just give us the boundaries of the village extension? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. Let me.
I'm trying to remember where its outlines are.
Yeah. Hang on one sec. Do you have it?
I have that map I did with the sewer.
He wants to see village extension. I can pull up the zoning. Hang on one second.
It is here. Do you want to?
Does it have the zoning on it?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how else to do it. I was just going to pull it up on this. Hang on. I'll show you just 1 second. And online assessing. And there's zoning. Okay. So now I'm going to stop sharing. And then I'm going to share.
Shelly, I just sent you this map by email that has the sewer
Okay.
and the
Hey,
district.
Can you see that zoning?
Yeah,
Okay, Mark, and then the VE is right here. I can zoom in a little bit
Okay.
without making you seasick. I can
No,
do that.
I see it.
And also you can see where Jeannie made a really good map, but this is right off of our online. This is
I sent it to you by email.
sewer.
I would add too that the village extension down along Washington Street, in the future, we may want to look at lot sizes there. Just that's something aside, it's a whole nother side. Jeannie and I were talking about that. Getting up to Molyneux Road or something.
Yeah,
Right.
right. So there's your VE. I don't know if that helps, but there's.
Oh, it does.
that's
Thank you.
kind of- okay, yes. So that's kind of a nutshell for the affordable housing overlay zone. That's, like I said, that's going to be a separate addition to your existing zoning ordinance. So very little overlap, but there'll be some overlap into the existing code, but we will make sure to include that.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Sure.
And I may have misunderstood this about the multifamily dwelling definition that we have.
Mhm.
I thought, I don't know if this is ours right now, but it says a structure containing 3 or more dwelling units. I thought that was pretty clear. And I thought I read somewhere in our code that we had said by more than 2 families. or a multi-family dwelling is more than 2 families, which I thought was a little more vague. So I would, or was hoping we were going to go with 3 or more dwelling units.
And right, we can do, let me show you, we can do a, what do you call it? Like a hybrid or something to show you. I can show you the definition. Are you there now? Can you
Yeah,
see it?
yeah.
Yep.
So it'd be under dwelling multifamily. So right now,
Yeah, multifamily. Yeah.
one or more, or can you see, guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, it says 1 or more buildings used for residential occupancy by more than 2 families, each living independently of the other. So 3 or more.
Right.
Yeah, we can substitute this for the one that's in there, because this is 1 or more buildings. In the state, it just says a structure, I believe.
Right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to. You're right. You're right.
Can I just ask, how do accessory dwelling units fit into this?
Well, I guess that'll fit in later. We will probably end up we haven't defined it yet. Like right now we define accessory apartments.
Do you want to go up to that definition, Shenley?
Yes, sir. And we define it right. Where am I? Apartment.
Right
there it
there.
is. Yeah. Now this is how this is not really accessory dwelling unit, although
It's similar.
it's similar, right? The state is going to encourage us when we get to that point in this affordable housing increased density mandatory changes. They encourage us to set a limit on square footage, the maximum. I think the minimum it could be is 190 as far as the state is for a dwelling unit, which is pretty small.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is the 600 square feet or less
Yeah.
gross living area within it. And because I mean, did you all change this recently?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
I think Jeremy did.
And what we're going to try to do, Lucia, I don't know if you were on then, but we're going to tackle the accessory dwelling unit piece of this law as we move forward with short-term rentals, because the accessory apartment piece here requires it to be somebody's primary residency,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So that's how we are going to try to tackle that. We're trying to tackle these in 2 different bites, do affordable housing overlay and the density piece in one at one time, and then do accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals, hopefully for June.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I was just looking at it because some of these ADUs are actually separate buildings. So I just wondered, does it count as one of the multiple buildings, on a building, on a site, if they are also occupied as a primary residence?
Yeah, it probably will. Like in the future, when we get to the ADU part, you're right. They can either be
Right.
inside the actual,
Primary building,
or attached or standalone or both.
right?
So when you're getting to only up to 2 additional dwelling units, that's going to probably count.
Okay, yeah, that's all I
Yeah.
wanted to know is,
Okay.
if it is a separate building, does it count as a separate building?
Yeah.
Dwelling.
I do think that having looked a little bit at some of the federal language, what is considered an ADU, and certainly in terms of like subsidized affordable housing projects, they have to meet certain standards that aren't what's going to be typically an accessory dwelling, because it's more, it's more of a complete kitchen and those kinds of things.
Right.
Got it.
They're usually multi-bedroom. It's a family,
Right.
There's also life safety code requirements that.
and right, there's all of that. Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
Although I have seen some pretty interesting apartments above garages that are.
Right. But no, Jeremy's point is like, if you're going for the federal subsidized affordable housing projects, you have to meet a higher level of safety standard for those projects.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
got it.
Okay. So yeah. So that's kind of that, unless you have any more questions or comments.
I would add too, that anybody that's going to be doing a 3-unit project is going to have to sprinkle the building no matter where you are.
Right.
That's a code requirement.
Right.
So, And even an existing 2-unit, technically, if they're adding a 3rd unit, that 3rd unit would need to get sprinkled under the code. The 2 existing units wouldn't unless they met a certain level of alteration, and then the whole building would need to be sprinkled. So that's outside of planning and zoning, that's building code stuff.
Codes, yes.
Like, I was trying to remember what the 2 versus 3 distinction was, so thank you.
Yeah.
Hear more.
Okay, and I'm going to stop this and let me get on to another thing here. What am I going?
Shenley, that was very helpful. I think well done.
Okay,
The best way to do it is an overlay like that.
that's right. I think that was your idea. Good idea.
Good implementation.
Yeah, good implementation. Okay, let me find you guys. Let me find the my other thing. Last but not least. Wouldn't be that one. Hang on one second. And then this is that. Okay, so sorry, I'm lost. I've lost myself. Okay, now I'm going to share. That's not the one. What's wrong? Hang on, just bear with me, guys. I'm just trying to. Let's see. Can you see this one? Dwelling unit allowances.
No,
Yeah.
you're on the,
Does it?
there you go. Yes.
Is that it? Okay,
Yep.
good. It's a little bit of a delay. All right, so this is the second part, the last part, but this little outline here, I don't know if you guys read it or had a chance to read it. I don't necessarily need to read it to you again and put you to sleep, but this is basically the law right here that's where your municipalities can allow multiple dwelling units on lots where housing is already allowed. So this is not multifamily anywhere. This is any place in town that the zoning allows housing, period, any kind of residential housing. So in a nutshell, it says any lots except for in the growth area, any vacant lot in any zoning district that allows residential, you can have up to 2 dwelling units per lot if it's got sewer. And period. So if you go down here and you go in a vacant lot that's in the growth area and it has sewer, you can have up to 4 dwelling units per lot, provided they meet all the bulk standards and all that is met. So this is where you get that up to 4 possibly dwelling units per lot. So we're not increasing the number of lots or frontage or anything like that. We're just plopping more residential units on an existing lot. And as long as we meet all the setbacks, codes, shoreline zoning, subdivision laws, everything else has to be met. Lot coverage and all that. So yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, so I had a quick question about that. So this is, it's allowable, but it's not by right. It does not require the town to allow this by right. Is that right?
Well, we're required, we must allow it provided they meet certain criteria. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty much that. So, and I attached, then I did, well, it's hard to see this, but I did a little chart, but it's just showing you like what I showed you to strike through and underlines. It's this yellow here is, maybe I can flip it. This shows you right now, this is how many square footage we require per dwelling unit. But now with the new law, we have to go down to, you can have as low as 20,000 as long as you're on sewer. But I don't think we have any sewer. And Jeannie, you can correct me, and any R1 or R2.
RU, no.
Yeah, so that's that. And like I said, the main thing that keeps everything in check is if you don't have sewer and you're on septic tank, there's no way you can get any more dense than 20,000 dwelling units because that's the law. So you can't go any more dense than that. And so this just kind of shows you what the existing is and what it gets cut down to, provided it can meet all the criteria. So we had to go back and change everything in the code and make sure we're not doing anything more restrictive than what the state's allowing or is requiring us to do. So as long as we're not more restrictive and we're allowing what they want us to do, then we're okay as far as that concerned. And then they have to meet all the existing bulk requirements, space and bulk requirements. Oops, sorry. And then this is just a law. And this is what we use to go through everything. And I won't bore you with all this, and I think that was all that I put in your packet. So,
yeah.
So that's basically it. So any of these increased dwelling units, there's going to be reflected mostly in the charts for each zoning district. You're going to have a strike through and underline for the minimum lot area per dwelling unit. And then we'll make sure everything's cross-referenced and works together. The only thing that, I guess if we take the third part later, there may be some changes, but so what? We'll just make those changes when we deal with short-term rental and accessory dwelling units. So unless you all see anything major or minor.
No, I think you guys have done a great job of taking what was given to us and fitting it in.
Okay.
Other thoughts, questions? I mean, like we said at the beginning, there's a little bit of this that we have to go through it and see how it aligns, but we only have limited ability to comply.
Right.
So I have a quick question for Jeremy. I guess it's for everybody, but do we see any issue areas, any areas that would sort of negatively impact the town with this additional density?
Or you're muted. There's, if you look on some of these, like Jeremy, you can feel free, but look how small.
Yeah.
Like if you're in the BTH, remember, these are only second floor residential. You can't have anything on the ground floor. So these are kind of small. These are like little studios, maybe. I don't know, but I don't think we can get around that.
I don't think we can get around it, but I also think those are the locations that you want that to be that way in my coming from a planning perspective, right?
Right.
Dense developed core of town. There is not much we can do. I frankly don't think any of this is going to create, like, all of a sudden there's going to be all these dwelling units around, right?
Right.
That's the piece. That's the piece I was going to say. Like, if you look at where a lot of these densities are changing, there's not really properties in those districts that are liable to become this. It might allow what we were trying to do when we changed the minimum, some minimum sizes last year. It might allow that a large existing house could be turned into a multi-unit. But I think where you're going to see any of this really kick in is probably more likely to be in the village extension than anywhere really the center of town, just because of in order for, and I've had a few conversations recently with people who are interested in doing some affordable housing projects, and in order for them to do it and have the money side balance out for the developer, they need to have a certain number of units, which means they need a certain acreage. And you're just not going to find that land in the center of town. Where you are going to find it that does have sewer is in the VE, and that sewer.
And that could have some impacts on existing neighborhoods,
right?
But we're kind of, those areas are what is called our growth area, right?
Right.
That has always been envisioned in the comp plan to be where the growth happens. So, I mean, part of this makes a lot of sense. There are some lots in the village extension or near the village extension that I could see have the size, 3 acres in size that could be developed. There's a lot of, we're up against a lot sometimes in Camden, geologically. I mean, the ledge that we have around makes some development very difficult and very
Right.
costly. So. Yeah, and you throw in, I mean, there's a lot, I know it's a unique case, but there is a acre lot or so on Chestnut Street that went for $800,000 recently, a vacant lot. So, I mean, just the prices of things, and the
Right.
cost of land
Yeah.
combined with labor, that's, I think that really makes it challenging. But I mean, I am hopeful that there are these, like Christo said, these large, big homes, people may start looking at putting another unit in there. I mean, though, I think that infill's good and not a bad thing. And I think, frankly, I think Camden, the people that, own properties and live in Camden respect the neighborhoods as it is and want to continue that. I generally believe that. So I'm not sure we'll see a lot of negative impact with you.
Yeah,
Pat?
no, I just wondered, because you've been thinking about this so much and you and Shenley have gone through it so much. And so I just wondered if there was any areas that you were concerned about.
Well, I mean, I think all along initially when the affordable housing or this whole housing thing came up, I kept pressing to the state. You guys, they were kind of forgetting about shoreland zoning, and they had to, make sure to exempt all these rules from the shoreland zoning, right? And if you look along the village extension, it goes right along Washington Street, right up along the river. So a lot of that area is already in shoreland zoning. So on the, what would be northeast side of Washington Street. And then you get into the other side of Molyneux, and you've got shoreland zoning on both sides of you on that peninsula there. So I mean, we're kind of not a lot of opportunity for it, but there is some off of Cobb Road. I think there could be some as well.
I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah. So
Pat, you had a question?
It was just kind of a continuation of what we were talking about, because one of the questions I did have before, I think you talked about, you knew of some developers who might be interested in this approach of developing for affordable housing. I just put down, do we think this will really help our town with affordable housing? But I guess it sounds like there are some limitations, but potentially some
there's the
options.
potential for sure. I mean, again, it's all we're competing, and developers are competing all over with each other for tax credits too. And you get a lot of points on these projects if if you have public transit, you get more points than another project would get. So developers do have to compete with other developers for that fund. And
I mean,
credits. So
I think to your question, Pat, the reality is, will this make things more attractive to a developer? Probably it won't change a lot.
Yeah.
For Camden, in the eyes of those developers, it may change a little bit, but at the same time, it doesn't. We have to do it, and B, to Lucia's question, these things won't negatively really have an impact. What I see is that it might encourage someone to do something with slightly smaller units in town if we allow a little more density, which could help the available accessible markets as well as the legally defined affordable.
I mean, I think it's important to know, like in the village district right now, right, we allow 2 units pretty much on any lot.
Right.
And we changed that, and we didn't see a rush. I mean, granted, that wasn't that long ago, in construction projects take planning, but we haven't seen a big rush for people to add another unit into their home. Even though we changed the rules to allow it. This goes even a little, goes down to what,
A little farther.
3,300 square feet per dwelling unit instead of 5 in essence.
Right.
So on that note, I mean, is there anything that you all have thought about before, that has come up before about incentivizing more affordable units?
That's a hard thing to do. Municipalities don't have a lot of room to provide incentives like that. We do have tax increment financing districts downtown, and we have a highway one as well. We don't have a affordable housing provision in that. We could do that at any time. That would need to go to town voters. We had talked about possibly the need to do that when we were looking at the tannery redevelopment options a couple of years ago. One of the projects would have required the housing TIF. And should that have gone forward, we would have made that happen. So I think the town's always open to making those things happen. But outside of that, there's not a lot of incentives that we can provide a developer. There's just really not, other than things like land, right? And it's one thing municipalities have. Sometimes we have a little bit of land. We have the tannery site. We have Sagamore Farm, 73 acres up on Route 1. There's a couple of house lots, I think, available in and around, like in some neighborhoods that the town owns, that at some point I'd like the town to look at probably just getting on the market. Just to add, a couple house lots here and there. We have a chunk of land out on Wiley Road or out that way. But it's remote, it's not close to town. It's not where you'd want a housing project. We do have, we are thinking of some possibilities on John Street. We're talking about extending the sewer up John Street too, which is something that could facilitate projects. We have Mountainside Co-op, mobile home co-op, which is a really neat thing. What they've done, they turned that from a property owner owned it. He wanted to sell. The community created a cooperative and bought that mobile home park. They're in the process now, and I've been working with them on a grant application to get congressional earmark to build a sewer line to go from the Mountainside Park down Molyneux Road to pump station we have at the end down by the dam. So that would open up that stretch of Molyneux for the possibility for more dense development that on sewer. So those are the things that are out there. I mean, extending sewer line is hugely expensive. But we're
here.
hopefully we'll be successful. Both Senator Collins and Senator King have moved that forward, and I think Senator Collins is the chair of the committee, so I'm hopeful that is going to move forward, but who knows what's going on in Washington these days. So fingers crossed on that one. I think that'll be the biggest help in terms of housing opportunities and options in town, would be that sewer extension.
Yeah. Shanley, I think we can stop sharing the map.
Sounds good.
That one had this location of the sewer lines
Yeah.
in the districts, and the current subdivisions are a darker.
Right. I think that's a good point, Jeannie, that because those subdivisions have those requirements already what they are for that subdivision, that would need to go back to subdivision approval oftentimes because of the way the lots were approved. So it doesn't supersede all those requirements.
Right.
You guys good?
Other thoughts, questions, anybody?
I'll look forward to the discussion of the accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
I actually have one more follow-up, and not to extend this any further, but with subdivisions, I mean, does the town have the ability, for example, to say, someone is building or wants to subdivide into 7 or 8 different dwelling units? Can the town require one of those dwelling units to be affordable?
I
It's kind of
don't,
a planning gain.
I don't think we could require that as part of a project unless it's written into our ordinance.
Yeah, we would have to, I mean, several communities like Portland, if somebody's building an apartment project, they're supposed to have several of, a certain percentage, or they can pay a fee into a fund that the city holds that is for building affordable housing, but that's an established policy that we would have to enact. And that applies typically it applies more to rentals or to condo units, that they set some units below market price. But that would be a separate conversation that we would have to create.
But we would have to have, you were saying, a specific ordinance for that. Is that what you said, Jeremy?
Or, yeah, we'd have to write it into.
In a subdivision or something, yeah.
Oh, okay. I just have one quick comment on next meetings. It says possible public hearing, zoning ordinance amendment. I would prefer July 27th, if that's okay with everybody else. I didn't know if I could put that in right now, that request in right now or not.
Jeannie and Shenley, isn't that too late for
I
us?
think it's too late. I think we're really on a tight timeline. In fact, I was going to ask if you guys felt comfortable going forward on the 20th for the
Yeah,
public hearing.
I think we have to do it before the 25th, right?
Right.
Right.
Well, you could actually do it and go to the select board before the public hearing, and we've done that before, but we really don't have a good excuse to do it this time. We've got time to do the normal
Right.
time frame.
We have to have to the select board on the 25th, the recommendation from the planning board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, I think if we have most of us there on the 20th, if we were, I think that the 20th is good for Ethan.
Yes.
Lucia, John, Mark, is that?
I'm in town on the 20th.
20th is good for me.
Okay. All right, that's fine. I just wasn't sure if I could make that meeting, but it sounds like you guys would have enough people, so that's fine.
We have enough. And, it's like this discussion here, it's I don't want to say that it's a formality, but it is a bit of a pro forma. What we've talked about today is going to be the meat of what we'll discuss at the public hearing.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Right.
Shelly, do they want to see the?
Yeah, I mean, like, I can try and get you guys a copy of the draft. Can you mute Jeannie? A copy of the draft. Jeannie, can you
Can I what?
mute yourself?
Oh,
Thank you. It's feedback. It's giving me feedback. We can try and send you at the early next week a copy of the actual ordinance, underlined, strike through, and everything, which you would see on the 20th.
Yeah,
do you
that
want
would
to
be
do
great.
that? Okay,
Yeah.
and we'll try and get it to you guys before then. I mean, we have a quorum on the 13th, but I don't think anybody really thinks we need to meet again before the 20th. We can go straight from here.
Yeah.
We
I mean,
implement.
We've kind of jumped that question, but my consensus from everybody here is we're pretty good with all the changes that we don't have any other major. There's nothing has jumped out at anyone here of saying what that just doesn't work, or that's
Gonna be a
why-
problem. Okay.
why didn't we do that? So I think we're good.
Okay, good.
Uh,
So
it
what
might
you see, yeah, I'm sorry. It won't be any shock to you. What you see is going to be what we discussed today. It'll-
Yeah, I was just saying, in that packet, it would be helpful if you could include a copy of that last map we were looking at with the districts and sewer lines.
Okay,
Just because that is always helpful.
got it.
uh,
Okay. Do we need a motion or?
And then, well, we're setting we're going to set a public hearing on July 20th. And ask you guys to do all the normal notices and
Yeah.
Okay,
you do need a motion to send the um, draft ordinance as discussed to public hearing on a specific date. So
Kind of gave the motion there, somebody.
I'll make that motion for the 20th.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, Pat,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Lucia,
Aye.
John.
Yep.
And that's an aye for me. Thank you all. Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shenley.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Shenley. I
Yeah,
know that's
thank
been a lot of.
I had a lot of help.
shuffling.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shenley,
guys.
Jeannie,
Jeannie,
everybody.
yeah, Clint, Jeannie, Jeremy.